The rain had just begun when Daniel Carter stepped off the crowded city bus, his worn leather shoes splashing into shallow puddles outside the towering glass headquarters of Westbridge Global Holdings. Employees hurried past him carrying expensive briefcases and designer umbrellas, never giving the quiet man a second glance. His navy blue shirt had been carefully ironed the night before by his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who proudly insisted she could help her father look professional. Daniel smiled as he remembered her tiny hands smoothing the wrinkles from his sleeves. Every morning, before leaving for work, he kissed Emma goodbye and promised her the same thing: no matter what happens today, I'll always come home smiling. She never knew that behind those smiles was a man carrying the weight of 1,000 storms. To everyone inside the company, Daniel was nothing more than a humble records clerk who worked silently, avoided office gossip, and spent his lunch breaks reading old business reports instead of joining conversations. Nobody knew why he seemed unusually knowledgeable during meetings or why he politely corrected financial errors that senior executives somehow missed. They simply assumed he had once dreamed of becoming someone important before life defeated him. No one imagined that the quiet single dad walking through those revolving doors had once built companies worth billions before disappearing from the public eye after a heartbreaking family tragedy. Inside the office, another chaotic morning had already begun. Managers rushed through the hallways preparing for the arrival of the company's legendary CEO, Richard Lawson, who had returned early from an international business summit. Richard rarely visited this branch without warning, and whenever he did, every employee felt the pressure. Department heads barked orders while assistants frantically cleaned desks and organized files. Daniel quietly walked to his workstation near the archive room, greeted the security guard with his usual warm smile, and began organizing documents that others had carelessly left scattered overnight. He never complained. He believed that character was revealed most clearly when nobody was watching. Across the office, Victor Hayes, the arrogant regional operations director, watched Daniel with open contempt. Victor despised employees who refused to flatter him, and Daniel never played office politics. That alone made him a target. Victor often joked that Daniel was too calm to be ambitious and too poor to matter. The other supervisors laughed, hoping to stay on Victor's good side. Daniel simply continued working as though he had heard nothing. At noon, an unexpected crisis erupted. One of the company's largest investors reported serious inconsistencies in a multimillion-dollar contract prepared by Victor's department. Panic spread through the executive floor. The documents had to be corrected before the CEO arrived that afternoon, or the company could lose one of its biggest partnerships. Managers searched desperately for the missing financial records. Daniel quietly raised his hand. "I think I know where the original files are," he said politely. Victor rolled his eyes. "You?" he sneered. "You're a filing clerk. Since when do you understand executive contracts?" Daniel answered respectfully. "I noticed the numbering system didn't match yesterday's archive. I made a note of it." Ignoring his pride, Victor reluctantly followed Daniel to the storage room. Within minutes, Daniel located the missing originals hidden inside an incorrectly labeled cabinet. The entire executive team stared in disbelief. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. Then Victor forced a laugh. "Pure luck," he said loudly. "Even a broken clock is right twice a day." The room erupted with nervous laughter, but several employees exchanged uneasy glances. They had begun noticing that Daniel's luck happened far too often. Later that afternoon, Richard Lawson finally entered the building. His presence transformed the atmosphere instantly. Conversations stopped. Phones were silenced. Managers straightened their jackets. Victor hurried toward the elevator, rehearsing excuses for the contract disaster before the CEO could discover the truth. As Richard reviewed reports in the executive conference room, another problem surfaced. A confidential financial presentation had disappeared minutes before an important video conference with international investors. Furious executives blamed one another, and Victor saw the perfect opportunity to protect himself. He pointed directly at Daniel. "It must have been him," Victor declared. "He's been wandering around the archive room all morning. He had access." Daniel looked genuinely surprised. "I've never even seen that presentation." Victor interrupted him. "That's exactly what someone guilty would say." Without investigating further, several supervisors began repeating the accusation. Fear spread quickly because everyone wanted someone else to blame before the CEO learned about the missing file. Daniel stood quietly, refusing to shout or defend himself with anger. "I've served this company honestly every day," he said softly. "Please check the security cameras." Victor smirked. "We don't have time." Moments later, in front of dozens of employees, Victor made a decision that would soon destroy his own career. "Daniel Carter," he announced proudly, "you're fired. Security will escort you out immediately." The office fell silent. Some employees lowered their heads in shame. Others secretly recorded the moment on their phones. Daniel slowly picked up the small framed photograph of Emma from his desk. He brushed away a speck of dust with his thumb and smiled gently. "I hope," he said calmly, "that one day you'll discover how expensive today's decision truly was." Victor laughed. "Listen to him. A filing clerk talking like a billionaire." The room burst into mocking laughter. Daniel simply nodded, thanked the receptionist who had always treated him kindly, and walked toward the exit without looking back. No one noticed that across the street, inside a black luxury limousine, 3 sharply dressed executives had been watching everything through the building's glass walls. The oldest among them adjusted his tie and spoke into his phone with visible concern. "Sir, they've done exactly what you warned us about." A deep voice answered from the speaker. "Did they really fire him?" "Yes." There was a long silence. Then the voice replied with chilling calmness. "Good. Now it's time for the CEO to learn who Daniel Carter really is."